The topic we're going to cover today, I think, is a very interesting topic. The title of this session is going to be Why We Suck at Strategy. Why we suck at strategy. Now, some of you don't like that language. You might say, you know what? No. I don't suck at strategy. I'm actually pretty good. But let me tell you this. I don't think, generally speaking, when you spend time with leaders at the very top, right? And many of you, some of you may be that, but a lot of you are actually reporting into levels and sometimes levels and levels to those people. And they may not admit to you that they suck at strategy. However, there's not a leader in the world we've met who doesn't believe this is one area they want to get better at and need to get better at. I need to get better at strategy. I want to get better at strategy. And many, when they're alone with us, will get to the place and saying, I really suck at strategy. Mm-hmm. If there's one area that they agree on across the board is this topic. Mm-hmm. Most people won't agree. I'm a positivity person. I don't like the negative stuff. I'm a weakness focused person. I'm a forehand focused, not backhand. Like there's all kinds of, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert. Everyone disagrees across the board. But the one area that across the board, leaders across every industry agree on, they have to get better at strategy. It's not an option. It's a requirement. And most will, in their kind of alone time and safe enough circle, admit the words, I suck at strategy. We suck at strategy. So someone said it's really hard to do well. So that is the topic we're going to cover today. And it's interesting. Megan and I were here till 2 a.m. last night arguing. And for those of you who don't know, we play a role as co-CEOs, as editor and reporter. I am the reporter with the volume of things I'd like to share. Megan's editing, and the reporter editor were massively arguing last night till 2 a.m. of what goes in and what doesn't go in. And we, I think, came to the right compromise.
Ooh, could we make it a 3-hour presentation? That
you we could 3 hours.
But we want to make it 45 minutes. There's something has to change. I'm telling you, we want to teach so much today. We're trying to fit a lot of stuff into 45 minutes, but I think we came to a good compromise. So you guys will be the judge of that. How we define strategy, we're going to share what we mean by strategy. It's the most amorphous, almost means nothing kind of word, but we'll explain.
Okay. So I'm going to jump in since people are still coming in. This is a quick bird's eye view of the slides. Hey, Laura, you can see our slides, right? And so parking lot after is kind of where I lost the arguments, but then the lesson part is there in the middle. We'll go into announcements. I'm just going to give you a bird's eye view and then jump right into this. All right, so give me 1 second. So yeah, why we suck at strategy. And by the way,
Laura's laughing. What is that picture?
On this whiteboard, that's a hand-drawn diagram that I threw in, which was the initial cover I wanted, which is a Megan drawn zone, being in the zone, being on fire. And when human beings get on fire, get in the zone, in sports, they call it the flow. Mm-hmm. When you're in the flow, it impacts every aspect of your life, work, and home, and everything you touch. And when you're not, the same thing happens. You're like a wet rag, just dousing everything. So the whole question is, how do I get on fire? And especially on this topic of being strategic, looking around corners, planning better than anybody else, and so forth, right? So this is the 40th session we've been running, right? So we're going to go right into this. So the agenda itself, quickly we'll give you announcements. Then the lesson itself is why we suck at strategy. And the punchline is this slide right here. Most people think of strategy and they think about mindset. In fact, the most common form of investing and working on strategy is the offsite. The offsite is an intense way to work on strategy. Companies do this sometimes from 1 to 2 times a year. Some people do it more often, but the idea that we get together, leave all the tactical noise and emails and phone calls, and sometimes people even make you check phones in to work on strategy. But we're not looking at that. And we're looking at the vacuum that exists, which is what happens on the on-site, not the off-site. What happens on the everyday, not the intensity, but the consistency. And can strategy really be just done 1 or 2 times a year? Or do you have to do it all the time? And that requires a different solution, not renting a house or a room or checking phones, but it's not mindset, it's the mind setup. And we're going to emphasize and spend time there. And then we'll give some time for a workshop if we can. So we're going to do our best to end the lesson by 11:45 or before 12. So for those of you who have it. And then we'll be here till 12:30 usually doing workshops and questions. So keep your questions and stuff. Anyone new also, the chat feature, please use it aggressively. Do not act like because you're muted, it's like a duct tape on your mouth. Chat in there. We're providing, and I think we'll make available the whole transcript. If you print it, it comes to around 15 to 20 pages, single space, a lot of activity. Ask questions, what you're thinking. People in the community respond as well. And it's something that we look at every week as well.
Is the bottom of our slide still getting cut off? If you
Yeah,
hold on 1 second.
that.
Thanks, Greg.
So there is a,
We thought we fixed this last week. These little technical.
Hold on a sec.
So we have a big camera right in our face, so we can act like we're looking right at you, or we're trying to look right at you, but
Hold on a sec.
just give us 1 second.
I thought we fixed this. Lock the text bar.
It's interesting. Lindsay's talking about, I think COVID has required more on-site consistent strategy because there's been no off-site in forever, or maybe the strategy has just been survival since COVID. Yes. I know our management team has had to meet more remotely through Zoom to strategize. Yes. So this is very interesting because it's going to get at why being together, why office space, why working together in the same office is going to become really critical, but can still be done remotely. But we're excited to actually walk you guys through this. We were literally fighting all night. We want to give you the bluff. We want to teach you in depth how to set it up, how to set up your mind, how to use your walls, how to do strategy consistently. Let's see, it's only very bottom. I'm cutting off logo, Charlie, so it might not make a difference. Okay, let's just go.
Okay.
You guys, well, it's going to be good enough.
I thought we fixed it.
Yeah,
but then it's like back again, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's,
Okay, and then so we're going to get, so Peter's asking, how do we measure how well we are doing with strategy? How well can we expect to do? And how long does it take to know? Interesting.
So what's the question
Sorry.
again? Sorry, I'm trying to...
Peter from New Hampshire, I think, from New Hampshire.
What was the question?
He's saying, how well do you how do you measure how well we are doing with strategy?
Mm-hmm.
How well can we expect to do?
Mm-hmm.
And how long does it take to know how good you are at
So
strategy?
time, of course, is the scorecard. When someone has great ideas, great plans, and say, how do you know it's good? Well, you'll know after some time passes.
Mm-hmm.
How much time? Usually you can see great strategies show its kind of fruition between 2 to 4 weeks, which also means if nothing is changing, that means in 2 to 4 weeks, you got to say something's wrong. Just keep this in mind. Ideally, usually within 12 to 13 weeks is the full fruition. By 6 months, even if you do it really badly, you should really know.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is most of us stick to it in the wrong way. But that's a great question. We'll come back to it because strategy setting is not that different than your classic annual performance evaluation, right? Playing with this, it's not working. But so at the bottom of the screen, cut off. We'll still figure it out. I thought we fixed it, but it's not. Sorry. Click around, but sorry. Back to it. As Megan said, stop being distracted.
Move on.
That's why we have editors in place. Us reporters are kind of mad. But okay, quick announcements. 5 things. Let me just walk through this. Avengers eligibility. I'm going to show you on the site really quick. First-time users, a lot of times, in fact, through the chat, even last week, people asked, where do I start? This is the 40th lip class. What do I watch first? How do I tell my spouse or a colleague about this class? The team is putting in a whole page on the site that you can just click, and then from there, give kind of an easy tutorial of where to start. Watch like a 2-minute clip and whatnot, and kind of get someone introduced to this. So we'll make that process easier. So I'll go to the site in 1 second. Then the other part is how to get into a small group workshop. So we have senior leaders in very small teams, sometimes 5, 6 people on a Thursday coaching on a much more sort of like, so this is different than the PRT groups. This is kind of small groups getting executive coaching, and how to be eligible for this is directly through your PRT coaches. If you're in a PRT workshop, which once again, there's sign up buttons everywhere. And some of you are being good about attending, others have not, right? And I think by the time you miss 3 times, they've been asked to kind of pull you off their team. But if you, go to these classes, your coaches are not just moderators, they're not administrators. They're the ones Megan and I turn to get a sense, a pulse. Who's trending up? Who's like literally model students trying to actually improve and get better from these. So we call it PRT because it stands for pre-resiliency training, but it's really a whole package of resiliency training on 101 and 201. And so the power of the PRT coaches is twofold, not only in making that recommendation into small group workshops, When you get into a small group workshop, you are one step closer to becoming a social capitalist, where we will provide the beginnings of funds on a consistent basis so you can do more good in the world. Starting at a first gate one of 100,000 per year, every year, moving up to 1 million, then to 10 million. So we're looking at kind of doing some pretty cool stuff. But the other part, this is number 4, is that there's a lot of worksheet and materials, many we had hoped to have made by this session, that the PRT coaches will be distributing in your session. So once again, the PRT coaches are sort of the gateway into a lot of good things. So please sign up for PRT, but also be good as students in the PRT programs. The 5th one I want to mention really quick is the physical office that we're building. A new office. We're in temporary space for New York, but we're also upgrading Boston as well as London. And premium seats, the best, tied to fitness, tied to leadership. Think of it as the best model students, the ones improving the most, we call it Better Me, the ones who are helping others the most in this community, Better You. There's an addition we did, which I know you're going to think is a little crazy. We commissioned as of last week the building of an entire hair and nail salon in the actual office. So on Thursdays, when we live stream co-op, we'll still keep running the online version, of course, but the best students will be invited to come to the physical spaces, whether it's taking workout classes, in our leadership talks. You will also have an entire sign-up sheet for free, whether you want to get a haircut, men or women, whether you want to get blowouts, whether you want to get nails done, manicures, but it's all the same thing, I guess, all built into the office. So stay tuned for that. That's happening as we speak. And
the whole point of that, just so you know, is we're building the new office spaces for all Next Jump offices to maximize brain power. But one of the things that prevents brain power is all the other things you got to get done. And so we're looking to just find all these unique ways to maximize it. One of the things you need to get done, you need to wash your hair. Sometimes you need to get your nails done. So
you got to get a haircut, and
yes.
like all the things that take time. If you don't have time, think about coming in a Thursday, right? You might do a workout class with one of our top trainers in the world, and with a group of people that you're used to seeing now on Zoom, but physically in person. Your kids might be doing a basketball session with Mackie, who coaches NBA players. Like, you're talking about that type of interaction. Sit in a leadership class, get your haircut done. Maybe later in the afternoon, you get your nails done.
Yes. Lori hasn't had a haircut since 1997. My God, Lori, you got to get, yes, you're missing something.
Yeah,
I do my own nails too. I'm actually not, so I can do it almost as good as they do, but it doesn't matter.
Anyways, quick announcements.
Okay.
Oh, quick thing. So pull up the sites. I am going to do what I believe our team should have done a good job doing, but sometimes they don't. So we will find out live. Let's see. I think this is, if I can move this.
I think the team who built it is here, yeah?
The team who built it is here. So let me see if I can move this. Sorry. Give me 1 second. I know the site's having issues. All right, so let me do this. I'm going to go to edu.perksatwork.com, because I think that's the part of the site that is up and running. And then you have over here, Laura, can you tell us where do we click here to get to the Avengers eligibility list?
So I don't think the Avengers one has been added to that list just yet. So apologies on that front.
So it's a hidden link.
Mm-hmm.
We have asked our engineers repeatedly, no more hidden links, but they keep doing hidden links. So I guess this is a lesson, hopefully whoever did it, to please stop doing that, because we want to make sure our QA team does not provide hidden links anymore. So we will provide a link directly off this, right? And it'll say new, so you'll know it's new. But they built in here this Avengers Award, which is a way, if I make it bigger, you can sign up for PRT here, which is all the workshops and groups of 10, so anybody new. But every single person in a PRT workshop is eligible for one of two things. One is to win in 6 months, what we call the Avengers Challenge, where you have to be in this list, and anybody in PRT and up, small group workshops as well, in this list. You can see it alphabetically. They're going to number it so you can get a sense of how many people are in here, but you can also look at it by organization, right? So this, I think AA stands for American Airlines, I'm assuming, versus Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm assuming it's AA. ADP, different companies. You can see all the people from different companies in here. And everyone here is not only eligible for this award, which ultimately culminates up to a $50,000 family vacation to honor your mother, for being the top Avenger, which is what we call the servant leader, the person who helped you succeed the most. So this is how you become eligible. But also, just like the Oscars, the people who are eligible are the ones who crowdsource and vote on this question of who helped me succeed the most. So there's a incentive to not only do well yourself, which is called Better Me, but also to help others succeed. The community helping the community. So in here, as you refer people over and they sign up to PRT, as they do, they will show up over here, and then they are part of the group that can win, but they're also part of the group that votes. So kind of keep those things in mind as well. All right. All right. So coming back to this. And then next time for the engineers who built it, remember, no more hidden links. Next time, if you make a hidden link, we'll find a more, I know, electric shock therapy way to kind of remind them somehow. But they keep doing that all the time, like for the 100th time. But anyways, so what Megan and I struggled with, I don't know how to even move this thing here too. I don't think there's a way, because I know I'm cutting off the top of the screen now and the bottom of the
You can
screen.
look on here. How about that?
Oh, you can see it? Oh,
You
okay.
can
Sorry.
look
My
right
screen looks different than yours.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
what we struggled with till 2 a.m. last night and how to teach this class. So I want to focus your attention. I drew this literally 5 minutes before the class on the left. The problem and the challenge that most medical experts, most neuroscientists, most psychologists, therapists, all of them have is the human mind is so misunderstood, not understood. I believe, and we've spent time with some of the best in the world, I don't think they're even at the 5% mark of truly understanding how the human mind works, the power of the human mind, the challenges of it. And so this field is filled with what we call assessments, but no treatment. One of the top neuroscientists in the world said it best to us. This is almost cruel. You assess someone
And label them.
and you label them,
And
but
then-
there's no treatment.
Yeah.
Right? So if I add a little more depth in this, this is what happens. A lot of times something shows up in yourself and a human being, and the word that people say is inconsistent, right? Because, usually when you can replicate an error, that's the process in engineering is called debugging. You can replicate an error predictably, it's easier to fix. But when something shows up inconsistently, the way that people start to label it, I think it might be an autoimmune disease. If you go to a doctor and they tell you you have an autoimmune disease, usually that's code in medical for I have no idea. It's inexplainable. Oftentimes they'll say we need to do more tests. We need to do more assessments. And we've watched this process of people going from test to test to test. And every test you go, it just gets scarier and there's more tests. This field of helping people on stress, anxiety, depression, the industry is exploding. If you look at every metric, the graph looks like a hockey stick in terms of the amount of money spent, revenues made by experts in this field. But here's what the interesting part is. If you look at what's happening in the world, whether it's suicides and depression, anxiety, those metrics also look like a hockey stick. Meaning if you're spending more and more money buying, and looking for expertise and solutions, and yet the results are getting worse and worse, you have to question something's not right. What we call an NQR, not quite right. You're spending more money on this field, but you're actually not getting better. Many people are getting worse. So what's happening? At the bottom, when you look at the treatment, right? They might conclude you're born with it. They might conclude this one has no solution. And if you've heard the phrase, this is going to be a lifelong challenge for you. This field is so new. It's so new. And I mean, the comments we've heard from the best in the world in this field is that it's unfortunate that the experts are scaring people through more assessments, more testing. And instead of being truly honest, which is like this field's so new and I don't quite know exactly how to help you, they're labeling it with lifelong challenges, problems you're going to live with. And so that's where the assessment but no treatment, they call it one of the cruelest things you can do to people. It just makes you more anxious, more depressed. It makes you literally feel like giving up. So we spent time battling this question of, we could spend an entire class just going into assessment, but then we're following the exact cruelty out there, no treatment. But we could go into depth in the treatment.
I just wanted to go into the treatment and not
but then the
even do
problem is you don't
assessment.
understand where the treatment came from. So we battled back and forth this assessment versus treatment. And what we concluded on doing was giving you what we call a cake slice think of a layered cake. Instead of giving you, just the top layer of the cake or the inside layer, we took a slice of it and we're going to keep slicing deeper into the cake. But the assessment itself that we're going to show you, we introduced last week. Part one of the assessment, doing the assessment, taking the test, is actually part one of the treatment. It's all tied to awareness. We'll walk you through how that is. Part two is the ritual and discipline change. It's not the big change, it's the little change, but consistently. But there's a different discipline for followership versus leadership. I'll walk through that as well. So there's a lot to teach. We struggle to put this into a short class, but let me see if we can kind of give you the cake slice that we argued against this, what to do. All right, so quick recap from last week. I think we had called it the Sweet 20, but there was confusion internally because we have another program called the Sweet 16. So if you can, in your memory bank,
drop the Sweet 20.
Strike it, delete Sweet 20, but I want you to think of being called Developmental GPS.
Mental on purpose, but it's about developing your mind, right? This is all work to develop the mental, which I know you know developmental, but just to be very clear, GPS.
And you think about GPS, it helps you navigate, right? Learning how to navigate your own mind, not once, but all the time. So this is the image we had shared on whiteboarded last week. Developmental, the word GPS stands for two things: growth prevention scorecard or growth propulsion scorecard.
Same thing.
And the reason is this: some like the negative, it gets you more action oriented, some like the positive. You have to realize they're the same coin, opposite sides of it. If you do this well, you will have growth propulsion. If you do it poorly, you will have growth prevention. The 5 areas that matter, and this is where growth prevention occurs for human beings and how development goes wrong. We lose direction, we lose perspective, we have no discipline on the hard stuff, we slow roll and go meek in anything we do, and then LHF stands for obscuring the truth. No transparency, no truth. And if we operate, imagine scoring low. So score of 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So in each of the things, the lowest you can score is a 1. So the lowest total score is 5. The highest score is 20. So we said this question, what's your 20, right? Kind of like, I think they do this in police people. Where are you right now? Your GPS. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you score low across all 5 things, you are almost guaranteed to not do well in life. Can you imagine? And I know we've been there all. When I'm constantly losing direction, I'm constantly losing perspective. We have friends and colleagues tell you, come on, like it's not that bad. You're losing perspective, or don't you know why you're doing this? The why bother, it's impossible. And the top portion, by the way, is different than the bottom. The top portion is all tied to thinking. It's actually tied more to our memory and mind than anything else. If you think about it, direction is the future, outlook, future. The perspective is looking backwards. It's all made up stuff. Our memory is made up. Our imagination of what the future is made up. Knowing how to navigate the first 2, right? And I did a demonstration last week of gunpowder. If you do this right, you get gunpowder that lets you fire into the present. The present is where we action, right? We talked about OODA loops, which is a military term for decision making. The OOD, observe, orient, and decide what to do, is up on top. The action is what really matters at the end of the day. Both matter, but with act is in the present is 3, 4, 5, right? So that's how the things work.
It's interesting, Amy. I'm glad you're here, Amy from Fidelity, saying documentation is critical to perspective, right? And this is exactly right, tied to how we're going to talk to you about how to set that up, right?
Yes.
So that you.
And it's important to document both the positive and the negative. Some people like to only document the positive, and they have blind spots on things actually going wrong and won't prevent something that's trending wrong. Some people do only the negative, right? And don't see signals of good things happening. Both matter a lot to gain perspective. The goal is the truth. It's a balanced view of the truth, but you need the optimism to strike with courage. So this is, by the way, we talked about. The top is the past and the future. Thinking, OOD, sense making, strategy falls up here, by the way. Think of planning falls up here. In order to, in the present, do the A stands in OODA loop, action, decision making, technical training will fall in here, right? Whether you're coding or doing sales. But the reason why the 2 connect is the gunpowder, or the courage required to have the discipline to work on the hard stuff in the present. to actually move with speed and be bold in the present, to actually go into conflict, to find out the hard truth that we usually don't want to do, difficult conversations, you need courage. And that's what the upper portion provides. You will see that if you don't have consistent courage you can conjure up, you will not act well in the present.
Yeah, Linda Wackerman is asking, as Simon's mentioning too, how do you get senior leaders who are in above their heads in LHFing, right, to be receptive to feedback and assistance? Like, how do you get senior people to listen, right? And they seem to shut down more and get more defensive.
I think, the interesting question about that is, I think people look at this too binary and black and white. My boss won't look at the, truth, right?
Yeah.
And the first part you have to look at is, what's your score, right? When we said, what's your 20? What's your score in this mix?
Yeah.
Because we like to always start with other people's scores. The person who scores high, right? Remember in the two extremes, you can score a 5, which means you suck at all 5 things. If you score a 20, that means you are literally the model example in your organization in all 5 areas. The person who scores higher and is trending to stay higher in score is the person most will go to for advice, listen to, strategy, all good things. The person who scores the lowest, usually you need to better yourself before you can focus on somebody else.
Awareness.
So that's why part 1 is the awareness. So I'm showing you literally the blueprints of what's being built. So just really quick, reactions. Last week we introduced this. Brent, who's here in the class, as well as Tom, give you a second to read this. Maybe Heather, give me a thumbs up once you read it, so I know. Just assuming you're average speed reader. Okay, so read it. So a lot of discussion last week after the session. A lot of people emailed after, wrote after, a lot of the PRT groups, the small group workshops, everyone went into scoring themselves and whatnot. So we're building tools to help you score this, but I want to show you what's coming, which is really cool. So the team has already started engineering a mobile app to help you on this. The scorecard looks like this. The shape itself is a pentagon, 5 different dimensions. What I mentioned, the red is actually when you look at it not working well. The green is, of course, when it does work well. And one way to look at it is that, number 1 at the very top is like your North Star that gives you direction. Number 2 is trending. How are you trending, right? Number 3 is actually the BIB stands for brilliant in the basics. When you get discipline on the hard stuff, and that 2% represents around 1 hour a week. Number 4 is the idea of how do I make the trade-offs, the hard choices. The word you can't see below says trade-offs. Hard choices, the hard decisions, the big decisions. Some call this the big idea because that gets things moving at a whole different level. And then number 5 is basically the relentless pursuit of truth. If we have these 5 things, the yellow highlighted part, I apologize, the bottom's not showing up. But so here's what it looks like. If you go and score yourself, so self is blue. Say your graph looks like this based on your scoring. So in this case, you scored yourself a 2 on the first one in terms of direction, which basically means that I meet expectations. So that we'll provide a whole app and program how to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is I'm below expectations. 2 is I meet expectations. 3 is I exceed, and 4 is I far exceed. So it's a score of 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this case, right, you're looking at number 5 and they put themselves as the 2. Well, all your colleagues or peers get to also input into the app what they would score you on. And it graphs that in yellow. This is the average of your peers. So your peers are saying, in this case, you think of yourself a little bit higher than we really see you, right? And you can see that gap in awareness by the graph. Then your coach or your manager scores you, and that's the orange. And what you're seeing in the orange then is that the manager agrees with the peers in some places, but actually believes, for example, in the case of moving fast and being bold, putting you at a 1. You're below expectations. I really believe you need to get better at this. What this does, right? And this is literally coming, it's a diamond eval technology we built years ago that now is being built into, we're calling this the 2020 eval. It's a pentagon, the actual shape.
Yeah.
But visually, you can see through the simple app, the gaps in your awareness. You can see your imbalances across these 5 pillars. And you can also see your overall score. And the beauty of technology is this: you can also watch your trends over time. Are you getting better? Are you getting worse? Or are you stuck? Are you getting better, worse, or are you stuck? But then you can also start to see your data and trends by the team. Team could be just the junior people versus the senior people. You can see the data by departments. You can see the data by the entire company. Imagine seeing the entire Navy, or the entire, say, all of Fidelity, being able to see, how are we trending? Are we scoring higher in our developmental GPS as an organization? And why developmental matters. In every piece of research that's shown up in the last 10 to 20 years, the highest performing organizations have a learner mindset, a developmental mindset, not a performance mindset. Those who focus and obsess on performance tend to win in the short term, but lose fairly quickly in the long term. And the long term shows up pretty fast for us these days. 3 months, 6 months later, they're not doing well. The learner mindset cares about performance, but actually is focused on improving and learning from every mistake.
You know, I feel there's a lot of discussion going on about, I'm not sure what Simon's saying, but can you roll that out, Charlie HR? But this whole conversation about giving senior leadership like feedback, I think, is being able to share strategy. And you know, Amy and Lindsay and Linda are talking about, and different groups saying how it's hard to get the leadership to unemotionally and detach from something they've already decided, and to get them to see your side. I think this is what we're trying to share, which is, when you get good at this, right? When you get good at being able to share and expose how you're thinking, actually be able to expose that, and not just data, and not just your, emotion, right?
Like, one way to look at it is this. I think of a sports team, right? The sports team has a strategy of how to win the game. We have the Super Bowl in the US coming up this weekend, right? Both teams have a strategy of how to win. And the coach makes the strategy, right? The strategy is made up of what the coach believes the players are able to accomplish, right? But if someone just suddenly gets sick, obviously the coach has to adjust the plays because that player is missing. But before you get to that part of what I do with my players, I need to first focus on, how do I put my players into a continuous improvement flow? That's the notion. So the question is, what is the score of your learner mindset? What is the score of your developmental GPS as an individual, as a department, and then as a company? Because that will determine what you can do in strategy. A lot of leaders, right, and this is the industrial age mindset, divorce people and assume, if I come up with this brilliant strategy and idea, I can just spend the money and make it happen. And a lot of leaders still work on this, which is why the excessive time spent is on trying to secure budgets. Secure budgets every year. And if I have the money, the belief is I can buy the equipment, the technology, or the whatever I need, right? The machinery, and I can just pretty much buy the head count. And if I have both those things, my strategy will work.
Versus anybody who's in the flow, anybody who's in the developmental flow, whatever you want to call it, when they're on fire. That's why the picture of the hands are on fire. When they're on fire, everything they touch at work in their life goes on fire in a good way.
The military figured this out, team to mission, and the connection between them. You need a great mission to have an elite team. But if your team is growing and getting better and developing, you can upgrade your mission. But if your team is getting worse and worse, you have to downgrade your mission. And so oftentimes this question that's coming up is, most strategy in companies happen in offsites, or they happen in closed rooms, and they make it once. And then you know what happens? We're using this idea of an actual GPS, right? We're in New York. Say I want to go to Boston, and I plan my road trip to Boston, exactly what we're going to do, right? And I'm like, but I planned this trip 6 months out. Right? In excruciating detail, what roads to take and what to do. Well, I didn't account for a snowstorm coming in, did I? Right? And if I start going, traffic patterns are changing as well. Like, in the old days, we used paper maps and planned, the trip. And you could plan it 6 months in advance. And imagine being stubborn and saying, you know what, despite the snow, I'm going to go this way. Well, there was a tree that fell down, the highway's closed. Doesn't matter. I will wait till the tree is gone because we invested 6 months in making this plan. That is what most people in today's day and age will call obtuse. Someone who's not agile, someone who's pot committed, right? Because they had new information enter the equation but refused to change. That is the question in many ways I think Simon and others are asking. Versus what happens with GPS now?
Ethan, you're going to miss the best part, but Amy maybe can fill you in. We're going to get to something really
so
cool.
Anyway,
but by the way, this app is going to be available. We're building the app now.
Yeah.
Yes, it'll be available on Parks at Work. There'll be a free version, and then we're also going to build an enterprise version where companies can take just their own company and chart and graph and analytics around their teams, the overall company by department, and look at the developmental GPS as an overall organization by team, by individual.
So
yes,
stay tuned.
So excited.
If our engineers do what I hope they will do, I'm hoping in less than 4 weeks, you will see a fully functioning app that you can be part of, and it'll all be free, available. And then the enterprise version has other features that the free one won't have, but still it's good enough to help you kind of figure out your score and then figure out your awareness in it and the imbalances in it.
Yeah.
Right. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
So just this slide, I'll just show it really quick. Is simply saying, the gaps in awareness, the imbalances overall score. People ask, where's results? And this is the important part. If you do the developmental GPS and you score better, you improve, the chance of getting results, success is higher. Results are so hard that it's never guaranteed.
Yeah.
But what we can almost guarantee is if you score low in the developmental GPS, losing is almost guaranteed. And so there's a lot in here that I won't go into, but the extreme scores, if you think of the 1 to 5, the extreme theoretical scores is the armchair professor versus the micro tactician. Number 1 was, remember, losing direction. Number 2 was losing perspective. It's all kind of that mental space, the thinking, planning. If you do that really well at number 4, far exceed, but I don't do any of the actual present action. It's what we call an armchair professor, all brains, no doing. On the flip side, if you actually do not think, right, do not plan, do not know how to do strategy, but just are really doing the details, it's what we call a micro tactician. More organizations right now have the issue of too many people in the direction, imbalance towards being a micro.
And I like what Katie, I think Katie Poe is it. I like what you're saying, which is right now leadership's drowning with all the new challenges. And this is exactly what's happening. Everything has to be rethought because the world is changing so much. And so people are trying to do it, but then they feel it's uncoordinated and they're resenting it and they're feeling like resentment. But this is where in the next in the next 6 months, right? Sorry, in the next 6 months, this is where if you learn this skill, this is the hardest skill, right? To have perspective and have future outlook and vision and be able to implement and execute, get momentum and trending to be able to show that. That's what you need to learn how to do. That's the thing we're trying to teach how to do that. You got to get in the flow to do that. So that's what we're trying to teach, because in the next 6 months, huge opportunity for people to come out of nowhere in their organizations to help the company rise up,
Totally. So that part 1, by the way, once again, the test is the practice. The test is the training. Getting the assessment done will give you the awareness that helps you adjust. Part 1. Part 2 is you have to do more than that, right? I'm going to start because what the big news last week was Jeff Bezos, Amazon's founder and CEO, stepping down as CEO, moving to chairman post. And so a lot of things on the social media and the internet popping up about Jeff's quotes. These are 2 quotes of Jeff, right? So I'm looking again at Heather. Let me know, thumbs up when you read it. These are both from Jeff Bezos. Okay, so what's interesting is this. I'm going to put some emphasis on the key parts of what he wrote that's important. Guided, messy, and tangential. This idea that because we're so trained in the industrial age of followership, we focus so much on efficiency, being effective. But the idea of strategy, thinking, breakthrough thinking, being creative is a messy and tangential process, but it is not random. It's guided. So what does that mean? In practice, what does guided mean? And how do I do messy? And tangential means things that aren't quite easily connected. I have to recognize patterns in something. Maybe I'm raising my child and the struggle there is the same similar struggle I'm having managing someone, maybe managing even up to my manager and to maybe managing my parents, these tangential connections. How do I find a connective tissue? And does that result in great strategies to be more effective? So the slide in the beginning, the punchline, that mind setup, right? The frustration in most organizations is that trying to come up with a better way, a more effective way to do a creative brainstorm offsite 1 to 2 times a year is the equivalent of re-meeting to plan out our trip from New York to Boston and let's map out it every detail, right? Versus what's missing, the gaping hole, is not having the thing on the right. What most people do, and we have participated in roundtables and strategies within the Pentagon, training 2 stars in Air Force and Navy. I mean, every organization you can imagine, CIA included, and helping them figure out how to do this better. The CIA, in many ways, I would consider the brains, right, of our national defense. They're like, it's more brain power than it is like brawn and manpower in that sense. They come to us more than anything on one topic, which is, can you help us get better at strategy? The head of strategy there, obsessing of every detail of what we're sharing, and the notion of not looking at strategy intensely only, but how do I do it better consistently? Most strategies, SWOT analysis, people may have heard of that, stand for strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, design thinking, strategic imperatives, breakthrough thinking, storming and norming. You can make this list so long. People do all kinds of things of not only strategy, but also leadership training offsites. Where's the on-site work? Where's the all the time, the consistency? Because both play together, right? It's almost like, people sometimes do a 3-day crash diet, liquid diet to kind of get their weight reset, but you can't do that all the time.
Right,
you have to change things consistently as well. So this is what we're going to talk about, because this is what's missing. The right side is a vacuum of literally, it's just up to you to figure that out, right? Because when it comes to offsites, we hire outside consultants and experts, and the leadership plays a big role in guiding it, right? But when it comes to the right, what Jeff Bezos said, this is not random, it's guided. Well, it's really up to you to figure it out. Go watch a TED Talk, read a book, and just go trial by error, on the job training, go figure it out, right? I'm sure you can figure it out. Have a meeting, just meet more often, right? There is virtually no guidance to how to do this messy, tangential, brain power work of planning, thinking, strategy. And this whole is what we're going to touch on. So to understand the problem better, you have to first understand what's happening in a company. This is literally the best way to think of the 3 most important pillars of how a company is trained. It starts with followership training, then leadership training. So think of technical training usually follows at the bottom, people doing the work, some would say. The strategy training is like thinking, right? Who's planning and thinking what we're going to do, the big decisions. Then resiliency training of how to be yourself. And why that's important is human beings, it's the #1 asset in the 21st century. So you need to learn how to be you, which, by the way, sounds simple. It's so hard because we have wired ourselves to not be us. The way I explained it was this. Now, most human beings, we are stallions, but we are trained through 100 years of industrial age followership training built into the cultures to act like a pony and a pony show. Stay controlled, constrain yourself, filter what you're going to say, trim your thoughts, right? Repeat only what is acceptable. And so the idea of my original thought, diversity of thinking, not welcome, right? Because you will get in trouble, right? Messy is trouble. Think before you speak. The idea of speaking unfiltered, that's for children, not for adults. Well, do that, and the stallion doesn't even know what running in the fields at full speed feels like. And the best way I can describe what a stallion feels like, our brain thinks at 3,000 words a minute. When we speak, it's 300 words a minute. When we write, it's around, handwriting is maybe 30 words a minute, typing is 60 words a minute. When you meet someone who literally sounds like and writes like they're trying to shove 3,000 words through a hole that fits 30 words a minute, that's someone moving towards being the stallion they are. Most of us barely put out 30 words a minute through that hole. Especially, can you imagine when you talk in meetings? When people are hesitant and they say, how do I say this? What's the right word?
Well, they're saying a lot of words, but they're not saying anything.
Or they're saying nothing. The pause, the quietness. 3,000 words a minute is what our brain can run at, and they're saying around 5 words to maybe 15 words a minute. Have you seen people who talk that slow to not and control and filter everything, trim our thoughts? But then when you see someone go up to a whiteboard or sheet and start to write, do you see how slow they write, the hesitation? That is not how human beings are wired to operate. Because, by the way, there's a danger in just unfiltered writing, unfiltered speaking. So the only place we do that is when we do creative writing classes, or we do these like, improv acting classes where you can just kind of unleash the stallion in you and literally try to charge 3,000 words through a 30-word, notebook, or try to speak 300 words, right? When 3,000 are going through our heads. Only in those game-like places do we even get a taste of that. That's what the left is, and why the PRT, which is resiliency training 101 first, because the unique aspect of resiliency is before you even can focus on resiliency, you have to focus on dialing down your pre-resiliency behaviors that you make it difficult for someone to tell you the truth. But so going on the diagram on the right, so we had this question, how do I know which track I'm on? What training do I need? I mean, someone could say both, but we don't have the ability to do everything. So do I do followership training or leadership training? Well, so the first part of the question is there are obvious parts. If you're a new hire in an organization, you just came out of college, I think we can agree, followership training. If you're the CEO, the CFO, the executive team of a company, well, guess what? Like leadership training. But the question gets really muddy in the middle, right? Where am I? Because people are moving up and down through this pyramid, right? So we went through and kind of mapped out some personas to help you illustrate what this is. So the first persona I'm going to talk about is an individual named Milton. Milton comes from that movie, The Office Space. If you remember Milton was the individual who was calmed out, as in that he was physically moved into the basement because people didn't count on him anymore. Milton is the individual that at this point, giving Milton work is more work. So over time, people stopped giving Milton important work.
By the way, sorry, just because there's some discussion about this around being our authentic self, and there's danger to that. There absolutely is danger to that because this is the real world. On the left-hand side, that resiliency training of being authentic self, it's small groups, like 8 to 10 people, not, with the boss of the company, whoever it is first, because when you start doing this, or if you don't do it very often, it's not going to come out very good if you're not practiced, but over time you can get better at it. Will always potentially offend people, but this is where the resiliency programs are literally baked in, that you're consistently practicing this every week with a safer group.
So it's built, once again, the PRT class is not recorded and whatnot. It's to give you a safe space, which is why we're offering that 1 hour a week, at no cost, for you to be able to find the inner stallion in yourself. But before you get there, and colleagues tell you the truth, you have to learn how to dial down your automatic bad behaviors that make it difficult to tell you the truth. And that's a whole program. Please sign up, which, by the way, is the gateway to everything good, all the other stuff, including, challenge awards and being social capitalist and the whole 9 yards. So looking at Milton, this individual gets moved to the basement, right? That's the physical in the movie, but it happens in real life. When people start to get annoyed at you, when people do the micromanagement to the point where they're like, it's easier for me to do it myself. When Milton is doing that badly, people start to think everything I give Milton does worse. It sucks. And so I stopped giving Milton work at some point. And when you're Milton, and this is the hard part, Milton gets in his or her head, and that starts to make it worse. Maybe starts to believe other things, to feel good, and just checks out, doesn't get engaged. There's a way to snap out of that. And so that's part of the training. But then if you go above Milton, there's an individual named Cat. The reason I'm calling this individual Cat is because they copycat everything. They can only do something that's been done before. In fact, often they have to do it. If they do something and then, okay, someone corrected me, and now I can do it, I can keep repeating this, the work gets highly repetitive. They're what we call stuck in their careers. When it comes to new things happening, new projects, nobody will go to Cat, because Cat won't be able to execute anything that hasn't already been done many times. Cat's job becomes highly repetitive. And over time, they find in their careers, they're stuck. Milton and Cat are two personas that show up a lot in organizations. These people need followership training. But then there's an individual. Now this is a real person. So the other two names are fake names, but real people, right? Laura's real. Laura's our moderator here. Laura is in this state, right? Laura is in the followership bucket, but is a rising star. And so when there are complicated projects that are happening, Laura is the go-to person, right? Leadership goes to. Complicated projects she goes to. Laura has to use her head. Maybe she does 20% of the thinking, but her execution is very strong. But she can also work with some ambiguity, but the bulk of the decisions are actually already made for her. The big part, 80% made, she's actually making them in the fringes at 20%. So what do most organizations do? Most leaders, they promote Laura. You know why they promote Laura? I want more of that. In order to do more as a company, I need to scale what Laura is doing. So we promote Laura, and Laura moves, and her job function changes from who is an 80% doer to now starting to trend up to a point where 80%, maybe even 95%, starts to be on strategy, planning, thinking, right? Making the right calls and decisions so someone can code it, sell it, do it. Now, here's where Laura tends to fall apart. I'm sure you've seen this if you haven't. The highest performing doer goes to be a manager or a leader, and everything falls apart, and it's only a matter of time. Why does that happen? They don't realize their job changed. They went from doing to now majority thinking. Said another way, you know, the idea that there's no CEO, no leader who says, I really need people to do more busy work. Like, just doing stuff is not important. Doing the right stuff is important. So that's where decisions come in. That's where strategy comes in. Well, Laura, someone was telling her what to do and she did it really well. Now her job is to figure out what that right stuff is. And that's using your brain. It went from manpower to brain power. You need to learn to use your head, what Jeff Bezos called what seemed like a random, but it's not random process, guided mind setup. So my brain thinks faster, operates faster. That training usually is non-existent except for 1 or 2 times a year in leadership offsites. The rest of it, up to you. Good luck between TED Talks and books and YouTube and whatnot, and maybe just anything that you can get down from, you know, whatever called people pass down. Yeah. So the 2 types of training, down here, they need followership training. Up here, they need leadership training. Because Laura and all the way up, everyone needs leadership training. So this is the developmental GPS. Part 1 was the assessment all around your brain. Part 2 is actually the action part. What do you do in the present? So when you look at this, here's a way to look at the solution. At the bottom for Kat and Milton, the number 1 thing they need is technical training. If you look at the developmental GPS, by the way, we're going to provide all the worksheets, it'll be easier. But it's basically number 3 and number 5 in the developmental worksheet, the developmental GPS, meaning you need to build a discipline on something hard twice a week. Twice a week, something hard, 30 to 60 minutes. So for example, if Milton and Kat say we're engineers, there are things that are really hard. What is hard for them to do? Not easy, be careful, because usually when they get stuck or they're in the basement, most people start to focus on what makes me happy. What makes me happy? So what's the thing I like to code? No. I want you to pick the hardest thing imaginable. The thing that you're like, oh, I have to do that twice a week. Oh, I don't want to do that, right? That thing. Because if you practice the hard thing twice a week for 30 to 60 minutes, twice a week, and you keep doing this for 13 weeks, by week 2, 3, 4, you will start to see the signals of improvement if you do it religiously, like a ritual, discipline. And when that change starts to happen, you know what? Others around you saying, hey, Milton, I really counted you out, but something's changing. Because the problem is this, Milton goes lighter and lighter and goes easier and easier on engineering things that Milton wants to do, likes to do, but runs away from things that are hard. You have to train your body, discipline in the other direction. Same with Kat. The training, and why I put Saturday, Sunday is this. If you are behind, if you are stuck, you need to put extra work in. If you say, you know what, hey, I am just doing this thing that I really am not good at, it's so hard, but I'm going to do it during regular hours. It's like if you're a student, right? Yeah. We'll give you a live example. Yeah. You need to put in the extra homework. Yeah. And the way I would recommend doing it is first thing in the morning, Saturday and Sunday.
I have my son doing this, struggles with writing. I mean, he would rather do anything else. He's only 8, right? He's in 2nd grade, he's struggling, absolutely hates writing, tantruming the whole 9 yards. Sitting down, first thing Saturday morning and first thing Sunday morning is probably the last thing he wants to do to write. But the trigger is when you wake up, this is what you're going to do. It's like after you brush your teeth. So think about it. When you're brushing your teeth, that's what you're going to do. And to get into this rhythm every Saturday, Sunday, first thing when you wake up is you're going to do 30 to 60 minutes of writing, the very thing he doesn't want to do.
And the first 4 weeks, by the way, is usually
painful.
what they call the adaptation phase. You should not like it. If you do like it, that means you probably didn't pick hard enough because your body's not used to this ritual. Your body's used to running away from the hard stuff. So you need to pick the technical skill. It could be sales, it could be presentation, it could be writing, it could be coding, but pick the hardest thing that you do not like to do and just get yourself to do it twice a week, Saturday and Sunday, first thing in the morning, and then you earn the rest of the day as soon as you're done. Do not go beyond 30, 60 minutes. It will make you miserable.
Yeah.
This is why if you put too much misery back, this is a protocol built in with the best of the neuroscientists in the world. This can get anybody who's doing bad better if you practice this consistently. Now, it will not be enough alone, but this is how you start the inertia, the momentum. The leadership front is different. And this is where do not do it on the weekend. Strategy training twice a week during the weekday. The faster is better, but you're gonna practice exposing your brain. And this is the hardest part to understand. The reason we can't think better is because we can't see what's happening in our head. It's a file structure that's so complex, we keep it stored in our head. We need to bring it to light so I can see it, right? And so there's nuances here. We're gonna, once again, it's a cake slice, go into it more over time. I know I'm already over time, but harder thing first, revenue/mission, then easier things. So we'll go into some details here. But the best way to explain this is this. I want you to think about movies. I want you to think about the idea of using the wall. Do you ever watch Homeland? This is Carrie from Homeland. This idea of mind setup. This was her house. She set up a wall to capture the terrorist attack happening. We spent time with the team, the brains behind the capture of Osama bin Laden. Can you imagine the person who's capturing Osama bin Laden, the head analyst says, you know what? I have a notebook. I'm going to plan my strategy how to capture Osama bin Laden in my notebook. Or maybe in my 8x11 piece of paper, let's map out how to capture Osama bin Laden. Or can you imagine someone saying, let's use SharePoint or maybe Google Docs. We'll do a group PowerPoint so we can actually put it in our computer and figure out, right, how to capture Osama bin Laden. That's not how it happens. Even in this day and age, physical wall, and it's messy. And they start putting all kinds of different thoughts. In fact, this wall is the mature wall. She's color-coded once she figured out patterns. But in the beginning, it just starts to go up. And in fact, the bigger the problem, right? The bigger the thing you're trying to accomplish, the bigger the canvas you need, which is the wall. To be able to see your mind on the wall is how you fix it. And this is what happens that goes wrong. Step one is to outline the wall. I have to frame it a little bit. And that happens on an 8x11 piece of paper. Trying to frame something out so big is going to be very, very confusing and disorienting. Step two is what we don't do. Expose our messy brain. We try to jump to step three, which is the presentable strategy. Like I said, the development GPS, dev GPS. The key is number 3 and number 5. The discipline and the hard stuff that you have to learn as a new ritual, and then you have to expose it, right? You have to make it transparent to at least 1 or 2 other people. Followership needs to do it on technical skills. Leadership needs to do it.
And it's interesting, Chris from Pittsburgh, you're saying from the outside, these 2 pictures look like insanity. It does look like insanity. Our office has looked insane for years. And there's a part where I've always felt like it's more Charlie's brain up on the wall and it can look insane. I'm practicing putting my brain up more now versus fitting my thinking into his structure. It does. You feel insane, you look crazy, which is why people don't do it. Their ego gets, it's like, I don't want anybody to see that. God forbid they see the messiness,
so
right?
What we try to do, we try to go from step 1 to step 3. Right? We try to go from the strategy outline to a clean presentation.
Yeah.
Right? We try to jump the step.
Yes.
We do this in PowerPoint presentations. Yes. We do it on whiteboards. You see it. When you're in a group meeting and someone goes to their whiteboard, do you see the hesitation before they write? Do you see them write like in big letters and slowly?
Yeah.
That's not how the brain works. The brain moves at 3,000 trying to shove out in a hole that fits 30. That's a stallion using their brain to the fullest. But instead, we run like a constrained pony in a kid's pony ride. That's not how our brain works. And so what we do before meetings is we scribble what we want to say, right? In the meeting on our notebook. Or we scribble what we're going to write on the whiteboard before we do it. Or we have these scribbled and then we try to make a PowerPoint, or we PowerPoint in hiding until we show it to someone. We're trying to go from step 1 to step 3. And we're wondering why it's not so innovative, why it's not so creative, why it's a regurgitation. It's rehearsed. It's not using our brain power. It is literally using our recall power, or like regurgitation, memorization. It's not full use of our brain. The hardest part, as in the largest part of the work, the 80% part is step 2, and we don't do it, and we try to go to step 3. We need to ritualistically create step 2.
And that's why everybody sucks at strategy. It doesn't come out good.
And this has everything to do with ego and how we look.
You don't give yourself permission to be messy.
So another picture of this. This is a great movie if you haven't seen it, called The Last 3 Days. It's about a teacher who has to free his wife from prison, and does it in 3 days. And this is the wall in his house and how he plans it. It's a pretty cool movie, right? But the key is this. We are going to train you in this. I'm telling you, you're going to be equipped to be CEO, if not get promotions faster, because the key when your brain's on fire is this. So we're going to make a cleaner slide, but you can't see it. Imagine doing this. Imagine being able to simultaneously think, talk, and write.
At the same time, yeah.
Have you seen people who can do this? They can jump on a whiteboard and literally they're talking as they're writing and they're thinking. 3,000 words to 300 words to 30 happening at the same time simultaneously. Most of us do not have that skill. And I'm saying it's a muscle that you can train. Thinking, talking, and writing. It's happening. And in fact, whiteboards are not as strong as using these giant butcher board sheets, right?
Yeah.
These sheets are the best to use for.
And no digital whiteboard. I know Chris was mentioning digital whiteboards are awesome.
We'll explain to you why in more detail. No digital whiteboard, no in the computer, physical wall. It's got to be in front of you. The CIA, the best in these movies, they don't go into, let me just store it in my files. Let me put it in my notebook, because you can't see it. You need to be able to see it all the time. And that exposure is part of the key.
And Lindsay, you're asking, can we train on receiving all those words and ideas? Because you're talking about learn how to do it, learn how to think and speak and write at the same time.
So that is like the equivalent of the, why do you wear a mask for COVID? Like this idea, why do you practice giving feedback before you practice receiving? You need to get the chain reaction going in every team, in every organization. Everyone's being trained to receive. Everyone's trained to receive feedback. Everyone's trained to receive, someone else's brain dump on the wall, but nobody's doing it.
Yeah.
How do you break that chain reaction? Yeah. You need to go first and lead.
And I like, Heather, how you're saying you can relate to what I said, where you're trying to fit your thinking into somebody else's structure and brain thinking. And that's what I think a lot of people feel in big organizations. I'm trying to fit my thinking into some structure, into something that's already set. It is shocking. I mean, the stuff that's coming out, sorry, I'm just saying, it's brilliant. The 2020 eval, some of the thinking, I mean, I didn't even know it was in there last Thursday after COA. Like, what? Once this insight came out, what? I mean, it's there, you have it. You just have to practice putting it out on paper.
So I'll show you an example, but there's three other words in there.
I'm gonna wait for your big idea to come out from the thinking, Heather.
So there's 3 other words there on the left we got from one of the best neuroscientists in the world. Human brains work in 3 ways: figural, semantic, and symbolic. Figural is shapes and drawings, right?
Diagrams.
Right? I think when you play Pictionary, you can draw pictures, right? And then they say you can't use words and you can't use numbers, right? Semantic is words and symbolic is numbers. The human brain thinks in all 3. And we were saying, imagine playing Pictionary and you can only use numbers, or you can only use words, or you can only use figures. It's harder.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, Pictionary, the rules are you can't use numbers and symbols.
Yeah, but if you could, it'd be so much easier.
But the brain is if you're trying to pump 3,000 words through a hole that only fits 30, you need the shortcuts to do stuff. We're saying, certain words are hard. How do you draw in figures the word action, right? Or let's see, prioritization. Try to draw prioritization only in shapes. Really hard. But as soon as you can put a number, easy. You need to be able to use all 3. All 3. So imagine being able to do 3 by 3. I can think and talk and write at the simultaneous same time, figuratively, semantically, symbolically. That is a stallion learning to run at the pace of what a stallion's built to run, which is all of us with our human brains.
Here's the thing, like Chris is mentioning, writing things down, Chris from Disney, writing things down, it sticks more personal accountability. That's more semantic. So you might be more
it depends on what she writes down.
Oh, I'm thinking semantically. You mean words, like you feel like you need to write down what you're going to do in words. Because
take a look at your notes from this class.
Yeah.
Step back and look at it.
Is it like?
Does it look like all words?
All words? Is there graphs? Is there like arrows and circles?
Is it numbers?
Are there numbers on it?
There should be over time a healthy balance of all three, which means it's like running a race. You need all three, and you're running with only one.
Okay, she's saying there's a hot mess. Yeah.
It should be a hot mess, but the quality of the hot mess, once again, numbers, diagrams, right?
And words.
And then, by the way, as you re-look at it, this is the key, and this is why it's messy. Insights come in hindsight. Insights occur in hindsight. That's why it's messy. When we present it, it looks like structured. Here's my thesis point, and then here's backup bullets. If you are writing that way, that is not how your brain thinks when it's in first thinking mode. That's what happens when it's rehearsed and trimmed and filtered and edited to be politically and bureaucratically correct. That's what shows up.
Interesting. Simon Sparks mentioning, what about audio, music, and sound? A lot of times you'll see we'll add in a video, a clip from a YouTube movie, the Eminem movie. Like sometimes music and sound is a way to emphasize what you mean. It's like you see it in a movie or you see it in as a song or something. Absolutely.
But I always think about the idea that the reason why audio sometimes and those things are hard is this. I want to not only do this exercise, but then make transparent and expose it to another human being. The easiest way to explain something, share something is an image. Why Instagram became so popular. Eventually there's TikTok and videos and stuff, and you can try to make short videos and stuff. It's a lot of work though, to get the sound right and that, but the image that can most communicate what's going through your head fast. Think speed and think eventually the ability to get accuracy and communication. So this muscle, if you don't learn this muscle, you can't be strategic. You cannot do sense-making, decision-making. You can't do planning and thinking very well. And this foundational muscle is what we need to train. So I'll show you what it looks like. So this is actually our wall in the office. One of it is dedicated. The problem, Megan's son, Brendan, he needs to get better in academics. So it gives you a sense, by the way, the left, the trending positive, negative, right? That's the past, that's a trending past. The right is the future outlook. The little image that's hidden is kind of his doubters, so I don't want to expose someone. The middle is the present, what's running now, right? But what you're seeing at the center, so I'll show you step one, right? Make sure I did this right. Step one should be this whole 8 by 11 outline, right? Of what the wall is going to be. That was Megan's initial diagram of how she wanted the wall set up. Then step 1B was setting up this giant wall. Step 2 looks like sheets like this. This is one of the messy versions of the developmental GPS. This was the one that Megan wrote, right? And you can see like it's a sheet that's fighting to be three-dimensional because in hindsight, you have insights, you're circling and pointing things and whatnot. And then the cleaned up version is step 3, which some of you say is may not that clean, but it's a lot cleaner than step 2. We focus on jumping straight to step 3. I want to figure out how I communicate it, which is another way to say I'm focused on how I look to other people. Before you focus on how you look to other people, you need to first set yourself up, right? Which is step 1. And then you need to focus on creating the muscle building exercise of your brain showing up on paper. If you can't see your brain, you can't improve it. And the size of the wall on the canvas represents opportunity. So I'll give you a little sneak peek into stuff we're going to teach how to use the wall better. It's a whole process. This room, right, looks like a typical conference room. Maybe it's where you have a strategy offsite. And usually when you go to offsites, you have like,
maybe before you do, because Laura, you were asking what we did for step 1. Step 1 of just that quick outline on an 8 by 11 is just pure intuition. I want to write down all the things he's getting better at, the things he's getting worse at, kind of the frustration, the good, the bad, right? I want to think about, what's happening, or all the experiments, things I'm trying to do right now. It's more intuition and visceral, right?
But you can do it this way. I mean, one way is using the developmental GPS.
Yeah.
On the right is basically the losing direction, the future outlook stuff.
Yeah.
On the left is the losing perspective, the past stuff, both positive and negative. Right?
I know, but we also said.
And in the middle has everything to do with what you're doing now.
Sometimes that structure, though, can also make it hard for you to get it flowing, which is why I'm saying it's just to but yes.
I look at it as if you don't know what to
starts.
do, this is as good a framework to use.
Yes.
But situationally, things are different, right?
And then Lindsay's asking, if you practice step 2, does it take less time over time as you learn to do it better?
So first, this is the part. Step 2 is the key, and you have to create these sheets twice a week. So we said this before. If you want to get better at this, since you take this class now, within 24 hours, create the first version of the sheet. Try it. If you don't have those giant sheets, take an 8x11 piece of paper, take 3 of them, 3x3, and tape it together.
And yes, just like anything else, you'll get better at it as you can keep doing it. The recommendation I have, the nuance in this program is try to do it on something very hard in your business, your revenue work, whatever your core responsibility is. Once a week. And then the second time a week, try it on something that's not tied to the actual core work that you're responsible for, something a little bit lighter, whether it's like something cultural that you're in charge of in your organization or something at home, like I have Brendan, something different. You'll see it will flow faster. And the only point of that is that it still should be hard.
Brendan's a hard one.
I would say Brendan's a hard one. But
pick a hobby.
Something,
like if you're planning a party in the office, we have what we call a culture initiative.
And the whole point of that, by the way, is that you'll show yourself you can actually do it, because it should be really hard if you don't do it very often. And thinking and strategy on your job and what to do in your organization, it should be easier on something else. And it's just to show you can
home decoration,
do it.
Something, you'll see that on the easier one, you can run like a stallion faster. 3,000 words trying to pump through a hole that fits 30.
Yeah.
On the revenue mission side, you can't, and you're wondering why you can't, but you need to be able to see yourself that you can. It's just untrained. And the first thing in the untraining is dialing down all your constraints, all your hesitations, all your trimming of why are you holding yourself back, which is why when you expose it, make transparent, you want to start with 1 or 2 people, not a lot of people, not many. And those are the nuances that we were going to map out, but between showing you assessment versus treatment, it was going nuts. So just really quick, kind of, these are the last 3 slides real quick, is this. This is a typical office. Kind of looks like an office. This is a conference room, actually, right? And you have to ask your question, how is my desk set up? Even when you're working from home, what do you stare at? Do you stare at your computer screen? Do you stare out the window? Or do you stare at imagine turning this into an office, how you would move out the conference tables and maybe turn to 2 desks, right? Maybe one's against a brick wall, one's against the window, maybe one just staring into the glass. What do you look at? Because that matters. How is your working space set up? So this is the actual picture of the temporary space Megan and I moved in before we turned this into our office. So we're going to go into this more detail either next week or the week after. We're going to walk you through what we did to transform this. And when we first worked in this blank space, right, which is what most of us do, everything is stored on computer, right? Literally, our brain could not think. We were looking for the next, basically, mental stimuli from an email coming in or trying to read doom scrolling for news, right? We're looking to find a distraction. You know, when you're thinking, your eyes are wandering and looking at the walls, looking around. And so we kept gravitating towards our phones and computer to look for distraction. The minute we set up the wall, everything changed. This is what our office looks like now. And we're going to go through this next week because this is a lot of detail of how to set this up. The nuances actually of the levels of where you set up, where to write and not the canvas. That space on the left between the 2 desks is the lying space. You can lay and look up, the most valuable creative wall. So all of this, we're going to go into detail next week or the week after. This is where we've spent a whole bunch going into this. Our small group workshop we run this afternoon, we will take that group through this of how to do this right. So
I love how Chris and Shauna are talking about how in the military you're also conditioned to walk around with a small little notebook, and it totally constrains your thinking.
Of course.
It's like you're trying to be efficient. You know, it's like I got to
Can you
try to
imagine? Like, can you imagine? Like,
I'm trying to capture a
how do we
terrorist, but
improve
I'm
the Air
like,
Force? So how do we save someone's life? So you get this tiny notebook. Go brainstorm.
yeah.
You don't have canvas. The greater the problem, the greater the thing you're trying to solve, you need canvas. And the canvas is not worked on just intensely. You need the canvas to work on consistently, which means as you're staring at this thing in front of you, you're able to go and tweak and add to it on a consistent basis. That's that Jeff Bezos, it's guided, it's not random, but it's messy and tangential. That's how you see the connections. That's the training. I know we went way over. Should we do questions, any of this? I know we threw a lot at you. Till almost 2 a.m, we debated what to show and what not to show. Actually, I can
be
show
honest. Do you think we're crazy? They're saying love that messy is good. Messy is
no,
good.
Messy
is, good.
is human.
Is needed.
Messy is
Yes,
human.
Yes.
Right? Clean is actually from the manufacturing age. Machines are clean.
Amy's asking, can you use whiteboard instead of canvas?
Terrible.
We're saying
actually not terrible, but no, sorry. I'll tell you what we learned. You know why whiteboards are bad? Someone asked the question before, how do you know when to clean? When you start writing on the walls like that, you get to a place where you're like, well, I'm running out of space. So when do I trim? When do I clean? When do I prune the wall? So the answer is this: when your head is spinning. When you're overwhelmed, your head is spinning, that's when you will end up trimming and cleaning, sometimes up to 80, 90% of what's there, keeping the key parts, and then you're re-canvassing, which is kind of how you reset your mind. But the problem when you use a giant whiteboard, you have to clean the entire whiteboard.
Yeah.
The problem when you do your thinking in a conference room, you have to delete everything because the next person did.
I like what Susan's saying, because you can't look back at it, right?
Yes.
It's like, that's why it's bad. You need it, right?
The reason why these giant sheets are critical, we should be sponsored by 3M at some point. I swear these sheets are the key. If not, home make them. Yeah. And by the way, the key is do not use a pen or pencil.
Marker.
You need to use markers because you have to sit back and see what's up there. You lose perspective when you're looking at it too close. When you're sitting back looking is where the insights and connections, insights and hindsight will show up. You cannot see it when it's written with pen or pencil. It's got to be markers that you can see. Reason why these sheets, it contains a big enough canvas for thought, and then you can throw it out, the whole thing. So when you're cleaning, you don't have to clean all 12 sheets. You can just clean 1, 3, 6. This is the key. We used to believe every wall should be whiteboarded, totally changed our mind. We need a ton of wall space for our mind, but it's a canvas. But these sheets are what need to go up. Whiteboard walls, not needed. Digital whiteboards, we have tried the best of the best out there. It does not work. Yeah. The reason is this: digital makes you lazy. Unlimited file storage, unlimited. I just save it all, right? And so I have version 1 to version 106. I don't ever need to go back and trim it, to go and prune it. It gets lazy. And then can you imagine, I know we've all done this. God, there's a bright idea ahead. Where is it? It's somewhere in my 5,000 files. It's somewhere in there. Or have you ever done the notebook? It's somewhere in my pile of papers and notebook. You're scattered looking for it. That's the reason we can't be creative. It takes mental bandwidth. Our mind can only handle so much. It is more powerful than any computer, but it's still not unlimited. When your head is spinning and then you're trying to remember all these things that I can't forget, that wall helps you hold the most important thoughts that you need in the current trajectory of future, past, and present. But if you go digital, you will get lazy. You will be staring out into open space, or the worst part, you stare at your computer screen. And now you're prone to every distraction imaginable, and we don't even realize, oh my God, something popped up. Oh my God, there was a capital right. Oh my God, someone wrote something new, right? Oh my God, an email came in. Oh, that's kind of controversial. That's how we don't do strategy. That's exactly how we become a micro tactician. It's in the setup. Set up your canvas to be able to expose what's happening in your mind. I used to say, I love fishing. If you ever want to untangle a fishing knot, you have to stretch it out so you can see it. Our mind is a knot. You have to stretch it out so you can see it, not once, but all the time. Yeah. And then it's a live puzzling attempt of the wall. And when it gets overwhelming is when the reset occurs. Electronic bad, digital bad, whiteboard walls, once again, not as good, right? Look, it's better than nothing, but there's a far more effective way to do it.
This is all if you want to get good at thinking, you want to be good at innovation, strategy, all of that. You want to be an awesome leader and you want it to spill into everything you do and everything you touch in your life. This is the skill.
But even the way, Megan, you asked the question, though, if you want to get good. So ask yourself the opposite question.
What happens if
What's the cost of not being strategic all the time? I'm strategic once a year.
It's like I'm not using my brain.
I'm strategic twice a year. Or maybe no, we do it so often, we do it once a month, right? I'm strategic once a month.
Mm-hmm.
What's the cost of being strategic just once a year?
Mm-hmm.
It's the equivalent of performance development, performance reviews. We all have them.
Yeah.
Once a year. And someone says, no, we do it better. We do it twice a year. We have the mid-year review and then, right. So you growing and getting better will be discussed once a year and maybe twice a year. Do you think you'll get better than someone who's doing it once and twice a year intensely? But there's also the on-site, every day, continuous. You need both. And we have a vacuum on the continuous. Sorry, Tammy, you said something. I can't tell what. Tammy, you want to unmute? And you look like you had an insight from Arkansas.
Oh, I was just looking at one of the comments that said, having sticky notes everywhere. And I never thought to put all the sticky notes on the big Canvas sheets. And that was Nicole May said that. And it occurred to me, my computer is lined with sticky notes and
around the edge of the monitor, right?
All around it. Yeah.
Here's inside the sticky note. What is the size of the canvas and the sticky note?
Small.
It's
right?
tiny,
Mm-hmm.
which means at best you can do a quote, you can do a tactical reminder, right? And then can you puzzle it as in canvas against it, right? Don't you want to take some notes and write more on it, illustrate more of the diagrams? And so then you try to put notes and notes and notes. And then you know what happens when you have a small canvas? You constrain your thinking. Versus you know what happens when canvas is big? You free your mind. You start to feel free to run harder at it. That's the 3,000 words through a 30-word hole.
Mm-hmm.
You try to push 3,000 out. When the canvas is small as a Post-it note, you better pick the right words. If you write the wrong word, there's no more space left, right? So every word choice matters. See what you're doing? Hesitation. You're trained to hesitate, or at best have a tactical to-do or a quote that I like.
A lot of people asking, how do I do this remotely? You know, some teams won't be coming back at all, right? They work remotely, more formally.
So I don't believe any of us live and work in a place that has no walls, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not impossible because of weather for you to just be out. I don't think anyone is working literally a desk in the middle of the field where
Yes.
nothing is surrounded.
That's a good assumption. Right? Yes.
Now, some of you might be, if you're a farmer, I guess, and stuff, but even then you have to go somewhere where there's a wall. You know, when you think, and this is what we found too, it's fascinating, that whole standing versus laying.
Mm-hmm.
There's an entire innovation we're experimenting right now. We believe the new 21st century innovation is going to be laying down meetings, not standing meetings, laying down meetings. Can you imagine going to an office and seeing people laying down, not like in some hippie way, but like in the same way, head tilted up, staring at a wall? Because what happens is this, the invention of the standing up meeting had two things occur. One is you're falling asleep. So as an authority figure, I need you to pay attention. And standing up is a lot more stressful, right? It's almost like when you slap yourself across the face while driving because you're falling asleep, trying to stay awake. Physically standing is more stressful for your body. Your blood pressure has to work harder to pump blood. The least stressful is laying down, meaning you want to optimize your body to serve your mind, not the other way around. But the industrial age authority figure, the boss man or boss woman has figured out, I can't get you to stay awake and pay attention. I'm going to stress you out by standing you up. The other reason for standing meetings is we have a lot of useless meetings, which is really saying our thinking is horrible and everyone's basically obscuring the truth. Why even bother having this meeting? So standing is more stressful, so it'll be shorter meetings. And I know many of you have been through long standing meetings. We've seen standing meetings. I'm like, oh my God, someone's got to give someone a chair, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's scared to move, right? Like, it's going the wrong direction. Standing meetings is trying to force, right, something to occur that fits in the industrial age into the information age. A laying down meeting is the optimal way to serve the creative body. Now, if you want a quick update meeting, standing is probably
Now,
more
look,
efficient.
a sleep class or a quick nap or whatever is a totally different thing. Like Tiffany's saying, I feel I'll fall asleep in it. This is more, it's in your vision. We'll show you next week, but like the main wall that you're doing the working, if you lay there with your head propped up, what you're looking at is not out the windows, not at your computers, not at pictures of your family. It's of the messy wall.
So,
And you might shut your eyes for a minute, but then as you think of something, you'll jump up and jot it down.
so on the left here, between these two desks is where we have 2 yoga mats to lay here. There's a pillow that props your head up, right? And so sometimes you close your eyes, but what the red is, that visually is what we cannot see laying down. We know
So
that.
it's like up this way.
This is the most creative wall, most important to us. It fits these giant butcher block posted sheets. It fits 4 by 3. That's 12 sheets in total, but this bottom row is not viewable laying down. We know this. The green part is where we can see it best. We can also write on it. So we'll jump up, suddenly scribble something, lay back down. The top is kind of the evergreen. So here on the left, you're seeing the evergreen wall because it's hard to reach. The working wall, which we write the most, you see the most white space. The storage where we move down, the messy parts that we're kind of trying to like move on to get more space. This is the details we'll go through in more detail. There's so many nuances of what to do to get this right.
You can do this remotely. Graham's asking too, right? If you're doing it with somebody, you'll always be out of sync. You can take the best part about the sheets is you can take a picture of it and you can email it or you can do a Zoom, you can share it, right? But you could even print it and write on top of it, like annotate on top of it. Now that's if you want to do thinking on the same sheet.
Yeah.
But you can also make your own sheets and share them. It is obviously a little bit more complicated, but it still can be done.
So this training and strategy will keep perfecting and then putting through even through the PRT teams. We've had leaders in Next Shift start this process of this week, where twice a week they're practicing the brain dump, right, onto these giant sheets, one on the revenue side, one on some hobby or something else. And the first iterations I've seen literally look like they're done by 5-year-olds. And what I mean by that is this: they're written very big, right? Because they are hesitant to write more. It's written to almost say less, write less. Yeah. And they're either heavily skewed in one direction of only words, right? Or only, it's like, it's not right, but that's what it starts before it gets right.
You know what, Shauna, I love what you said. I'm just maybe we just end with this unless there's more, but she said the messy canvas shows vulnerability, which I believe cultivates trust for those around. It did for me when the special ops commander had a massive board and all of his operators could see where his head was. And it could also send a signal of insanity, but when the cleanup happens and it's communicated, it would ease that kind of NQR, not quite right feeling, right?
And what I'm saying is this: you don't even realize how much you're holding back. We've been trained. We have literally baked into every school, right? Every workplace. Yeah. You know, one of the top things measured in our schools today is multi-step direction. Does that not sound very much like followership training? Leader comes, boss man, boss woman, spews out 12 things in sequence. Can you follow my multi-step direction to the T? That's industrial age training, built into every culture and every education system. One of the top things they still measure in how good a student you are. Where's the flip side? Not followership, but leading. How do you lead through chaos? How do I make sense of it? How do I decide what to do in what sequence? How do I see the innovative thing that never existed?
That's what creativity is, right? When you think about kids, that's creativity.
The example of Milton and Kat, right? Before they get to the place to tackle full leadership, they have to be people that everyone sees them as the go-to people, right? To get something done. And something complicated done, they go to, that's the place you want to get to, and you become Laura. And then from there, though, when you shift to leadership, it's a whole different sport. Like the way some of our leaders or the outside people we've coached said, you're actually requiring my brain to think faster. Absolutely. Think faster, process faster. And not only think, process the amount of information coming in as I talk, think, write, and someone's reacting with their questions and their visual cues and whatnot, and I'm adjusting my thinking in real time. Versus, have you seen people who literally cannot do the thinking or writing except for what they planned before.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's a scripted recording. And if you take them off track, they can't even operate. Yeah, I know we've seen this. Someone who comes to present and you ask them a question that's totally offbeat and they're like, so like, does that answer your question? I'm just gonna go back to my presentation. Like they cannot adjust. They'll be like planning something and then suddenly a bomb came off and they're like, well, so can I just finish my presentation? I'm like, whoa, something just major entered the equation and you're not
still,
adjusting.
yeah, you're still on your track that you planned.
That's the same as saying, I'm going into the conference room now. I'm gonna park my brain. I'm just coming with a pre-recorded, playlist. It's a pre-recorded recording, a pre-planned thing. It's like an act that I've planned. And I can only play that, take me off script, which is what they call creative writing or improv, right?
Right.
Can't do that stuff, right? That stuff is really for safe spaces and home and stuff that doesn't matter all like improv or creative writing. But when it comes to writing the strategy for my life, my career, when it comes to that, that's not creative writing. That's not improv. That's all like scripted and following to the T what someone mapped out for me.
Jay, yes, on the evergreen, is evergreen clean and presentable? Yes, that's more of the cleaner and more presentable thinking.
Over time. Right. Because if you look up and you see a mess, all you're going to see is a mess, right? Yeah. Because if you've seen a mess and you're holding onto a messy sheet from like, say, even a year ago, it just won't have the same impact as a messy sheet from today or yesterday or last week. So evergreens get clean.
All right, guys.
There's a lot to share. This is where we literally, till 2 a.m, we were fighting on what to add, not to add. And what we came down to is this. We don't want to do what every mind expert does, which is the assessment without the treatment. But give you the treatment, there's no context of it. So where we compromised was a slice of the cake. And then we will give you deeper and richer slices of the cake, both sides.
And we will be agile and figure out what next week is going to be based on what we reflect today of how this went, your questions, your feedback. So let's do that. Questions, or maybe not more questions right now because we should go, but feedback. We can get some feedback. You can email us always if you want to give us direct feedback just to us, Mega Chart, Next Jump. But thank you guys. It was fun to see you all. We'll definitely see you next week.
Practice this, you will change. You will change your value. In every organization, there is a vacuum and a starvation of people who can think smarter, faster, better in stuff that's never been seen before, never been done before.
Which is what the world is right now. It's the perfect opportunity.
It's called innovation.
Learn the skill.
Versus if you're like, you know what, I'm really good at doing the thing that's been done before and I can just do it over and over again. Guess what? Robots, AI, and everything else will do that.
Yeah.
But, the followership training, you got to first learn to do that well. And then do the more complicated versions of that. Then, before you know it, why careers fall apart? People want you to use your head, use your brain. And then people are like, I'm just used to actually taking someone's ideas, someone's direction. How do I train strategy? How do I train being a leader? How do I train making decisions when I don't know what to do? There's no protocol for this. There's no repeat thing I can copy, right? I was a good cat, right? Cat, people love cat, copycat everything. What do I do? It's trainable. And foundationally, you need to find a way to start to run your stallion. And that starts in these big enough canvases, running it, the discipline, twice a week, and then sharing it with 1 or 2 other people. Do not be an idiot and decide to share it with the whole company day one, because they will just show, right, how bad you are. As you get good, you might be able to learn how to do the ultimate form of learning, which is be transparent and exposed in public. Highest form of learning.
Yeah, writing, thinking, the whole 9 yards.
In public,
in real time.
on the spot.
Public.
Usually what they call Q&A. All right.